Every time a new technology arrives, companies try to squeeze it into the old playbook. In the 90s, companies took their brochures and turned them into websites, missing the web's potential for dynamic commerce. A decade later, they shrank desktop software onto smartphones, ignoring the native possibilities of mobile-first design. And now it's happening with AI. Most companies are layering LLMs onto legacy workflows, hoping for incremental gains. But as Box CEO Aaron Levie argues in his new white paper, Becoming an AI-First Company, co-authored with the company's Chief Operating Officer, Olivier Nottebohm, that approach just won't cut it. AI isn't just another feature. It demands a rethink of how work is structured, how decisions are made, and how value is created. Levie has also challenged the dominant narrative around jobs. In his view, companies aren't racing to replace workers. They're trying to do more, faster, and often will actually do so with more jobs being created. In this conversation, we dig into what an AI-first company looks like, what it really means to build an AI-native workflow, and why the hardest part of AI transformation may be organizational, not technical. Aaron,
Hey.
Thank you for being here.
Yeah,
the
thanks.
white paper that we're here to talk about is called Becoming an AI-First Company.
Yeah.
Can you first define what an AI-First company is?
I think an AI-first company is going to be a company that really redefines how it operates to leverage AI to increase the capability and capacity of the organization, where almost every task in the business, the company will lean toward AI to get as much done as humanly possible. So in partnership with people working within the organization, but if you're producing a marketing campaign, how do you do that 2 or 3 or 5 times faster leveraging AI? If you're producing code and you're writing software, how do you move 2 or 3 times faster through your product roadmap and ship even more software than ever before? How do you begin to find new discoveries, new innovations that you want to go deliver to customers? How do you better support them leveraging AI? So AI, an AI-first company is really one that is able to do more, move faster, produce better products, and better serve their customers with AI.
I follow. And you talk and spend a lot of time, I think, talking about the need to fundamentally reimagine what your company can do.
Yep.
You know, AI is not just about automating things more quickly.
Yeah.
And just to quote something from the white paper, the ultimate promise and potential of AI is its ability to accelerate work in a way that wasn't possible before.
Yeah.
It shouldn't just automate legacy workflows.
Yeah.
So can you give us some of the characteristics of the companies that are going to be successful at transforming to become AI first?
Yeah, so let me take that in actually 2 parts, because what you introduced was a really important distinction that I think anybody going on this AI first journey needs to understand which mode are they going to be in. I think by default, and respectfully to the press and media, I think a lot of the conversation instantly kind of veers toward cost savings with AI. So we look at a certain amount of work and we say, okay, AI can now do part of that work, and now doesn't that mean that there's less things to be done in that area?
Yep.
And we think about it as a way to save money. And I think that's a big mistake. The really big potential of AI is to invert that and think about now how much more can we do because we have AI. And so companies will have to decide, do they want to basically deliver the same as what they already do today, but just at a lower expense level? Or do they want to deliver vastly more than what they do today to accelerate, again, product development, customer service, new ways of marketing to their customers, getting new product breakthroughs? And so I think companies at the very start of the journey need to understand which path they're taking. Obviously, our dramatic kind of significant preference and bias is we ourselves at Box want to be the company that does way more with AI. And that's really what we're recommending to most companies going on this journey. And so the kind of characteristics you need to start to have and embody are experimentation, thinking through what are the new ways that work could happen, and what are the new kinds of workflows that you can be driving. So AI is okay, it's fine at being deployed against today's processes, but that's actually underestimating its potential. When you can think about, if I can change the workflow or change how we're doing something, I might be able to get dramatically more output or better results with AI. Companies that have a culture of decentralized organic experimentation where teams are able to try new things, I think is going to be very important. But also companies that lean into technology and have a strong point of view about technology in the IT organization or the engineering organization becomes very important as well.
I follow. And just to pick up on one thing that you said there about workflows and redesigning them from scratch, rather than layering AI on top of legacy workflows, can you give us an example of what that might look like? What would an AI native workflow look like that our viewers could think through?
Yeah, so the simplest thing, let's say in our world, so we help companies take all of their unstructured data, so your marketing assets, your sales materials, your contracts, your invoices, all of that. And with AI, you can really tap into all the value that's within that information. So a great example is we have a lot of customers that are building content portals or hubs that collect the data from different parts of their organization and then make it accessible via people to interact with that content with AI. And so you could take all of your sales knowledge that was ever created, sales presentations, marketing assets, white papers, product resource documents, put that into a hub, and then let any employee access that information. And so the typical onboarding process of a new employee is you learn the business, you go through sort of a very regimented training process. You might be able to talk to some peers in the hallway or set up some meeting time with mentors, and that takes weeks or months to go and learn the organization. But with AI agents, not only are you able to interact with the entire corpus of knowledge and information that company has produced, but you can even start to get much more proactive about it. You could have agents that recommend information to an employee at different moments in their journey. These are totally different ways to think about employee onboarding or education or enablement than what we would have done in a much more static environment where people had to go off and find the information they were looking for and spend hours and hours doing that.
I follow. Fascinating. One thing that I want to dive deep on from the white paper is this framework that you and your co-author Olivia Nottebohm put together for identifying high leverage AI aided work. You represent it in the white paper as a chart. You've got critical thinking, you've got repeatability. Can you walk us through that thinking and why it's the best lens for companies to decide where they're going to expend their efforts?
Yeah, I mean, any organization going AI first has to make some key decisions about where should they apply AI in the organization and at what sequence should they apply AI to that part of the organization. Most companies have hundreds or thousands, if not tens of thousands of individual processes that happen depending on the size of the company. And so you clearly can't deploy AI at everything all at once. So then the question is, well, where am I going to get some return on investment in the form of more productivity, more output, more efficiency gains, and starting to find the parts of the workflows that are sort of most appropriate for bringing some degree of agentic automation to ends up being a very critical priority in any type of AI first process. So if you just in a very simplistic way think about two axes, on one axis you have the frequency or repeatability of a particular task. On one end it's like you do it very infrequently, on the other end it's super frequent or repeatable. And on another axis, let's say the y-axis, you have the amount of kind of critical thinking, which is a sort of a proxy for kind of how hard is it for humans to solve this versus, it's kind of easy for us to do. It doesn't really save that much time. And so y-axis is critical thinking, x-axis is repeatability or frequency. It's sort of common to veer toward actually the sort of medium frequency but lower critical thinking types tasks, because in our personal lives, this is often how we're using AI. So we go to ChatGPT and we say, what's a good restaurant in this area, or what was the history of this particular thing? And it's totally saving us a ton of time, but it's saving time, browsing different websites or going to Google. So not extremely high on critical thinking in our personal lives for a lot of use cases, where actually the big benefit of AI is when you apply AI to these types of tasks that it really used to take you an hour or 2 hours or 5 hours to do a certain amount of work. And an agent can now do that, near instantaneously in a couple seconds or a couple minutes, and where the tasks have some degree of frequency where it's happening enough times in the organization where you can put some strategic energy to redefining that workflow or that process, where the ROI is there at the end of that redefinition process or reimagination. And so the kind of tasks that we tend to recommend people go after are things like, hey, how do you make it so every sales rep gets the same expertise as the best sales rep in your company? All of that knowledge that is packed into your organization, that tribal knowledge that a few people have access to that has made them better and better and better. How do you make that available to everybody? Okay, so take all of your corporate knowledge related to sales, develop agents that deploy that information or corporate knowledge, to any employee that wants it. Have AI agents that help automatically work through your product roadmap. Have AI agents that look through all of your research over the years. If you're in life sciences, it's medical research. If you're in engineering, it's product research and customer insights. And then have AI agents help you go and do deep research on all of that data to help improve the product roadmap or make discoveries. So those are areas where there's a decent amount of frequency. The company usually does that type of work pretty regularly, but the critical thinking that AI now augments is massive. Versus tasks like, helping write an email a little bit faster. Super interesting. You have to deploy those types of tools, but that's not where the employee base is going to say, holy crap, this has completely reimagined how I do my work.
Absolutely. And just to pick up on another element from the white paper, you talk about a maturity curve. And you talk about the fact that we're currently around stage 1, somewhere between stage 1 and stage 2 on that curve. In terms of the examples that you're giving today, are they things available with today's AI technology, or are we waiting for further technological advancement?
Right now, the state of technology vastly exceeds most organizations' ability to implement these tools, simply because what we will all collectively be rate limited by is just human change management. This is actually why these tech trends end up taking longer to play out than maybe we sometimes, initially predict. We're right in the center of Silicon Valley, so we get to see this technology the second it gets released, and it's super exciting and it blows our mind. Sometimes we accidentally extrapolate too quickly of like, oh, well, this will just ripple through every single organization and every single part of the economy. When actually in real life, we have systems to upgrade, we have data environments to improve, we have employees we have to train, we have change management that has to kind of, be deployed. So often where the technology exceeds our sort of ability to now bring that into parts of the organization. And so we're always kind of lagging where the capability is. And I think AI quintessentially is experiencing that. So a lot of use cases today that you could deploy would blow your minds and would dramatically improve almost any workflow in the organization. We have a lot of customers that say, hey, I'm sitting on hundreds of thousands or millions of contracts. If I could just know every piece of data in those contracts, the party names, the amounts, the renewal dates, the clauses, the critical kind of trigger events in those contracts, I would be way more intelligent about my customer base. I'd be way more intelligent about the risk of my business. Previously, it was nearly impossible to have people go and do all of that work. It was just too expensive, so we never did it. Well, AI agents can now read all those documents. They can look through all those contracts. They can automatically process your invoices. They can look through all your research data and help improve your roadmap. They can help generate code and when you're building software. So I think we have a surplus of technology at the moment versus what we've been able to consume, and that is going to now roll through most organizations. And what's amazing is that the AI industry is not slowing down. So by the time you update your workflows and solve these problems, we're gonna have a new set of technologies, a new set of models, a new set of capabilities that will let us go after them the next set of problems in that journey. And so we tried to outline a little bit of a maturity curve to anticipate where things are going. And it's our sort of initial posit on what the future looks like. And it really starts with the first stage of you use AI as really an assistant to ask questions, to get answers, to have agents deployed in certain workflows. The end state is imagining really a kind of a multi-agent orchestration where, you have entire workflows being run almost autonomously by agents, where the human is really acting as a traffic cop and an organizer of those agents. I think we're still, 1, 2, 3, 5 years away from most organizations adopting AI in that kind of capacity. But what's exciting is you can already see, an easy way to predict the future is to watch what startups are doing. And if you just sort of study how new startups are emerging, they are really, starting to run as almost, nearly autonomous organizations where they launch products faster, they deliver, marketing assets more quickly, they serve their customers better. That gives us a little bit of an insight into what the future looks like.
Sure. And picking up on change management being maybe one of the key blockers to this adaptation, one thing that maybe will help is your argument that despite what's making the headlines, companies are focusing on using agents to do more, not to cut costs. And as such, this leads to, I think you said, downstream positive gains in jobs. So can you just explain your thinking behind that?
Yeah, so one thing I've been pretty excited about and kind of heartened by is most conversations that I have with customers, CIOs and CEOs of organizations, the general bias is to use AI to do more.
Yeah.
If we host a dinner with 10 or 15 CIOs and we say, what use cases are most exciting with AI agents? And then you kind of looked at those use cases and you say, okay, are these use cases replacing people, or is it doing things that the company previously didn't go after? Most of the time it's the latter, which means that I think optimistically, people's instinct is, let's use AI to go and do more. Let's launch better products, support our customers better, launch new marketing campaigns. And so the reason why I think that creates a very virtuous flywheel on the people side is, in most organizations, you have bottlenecks. And if you can sort of accelerate a part of that bottleneck, you tend to grow faster, or you're, again, able to kind of get some throughput kind of gains that eventually lead to growing in new areas. And thus ultimately having to hire people to support that growth. So if you could have AI, let's just take a hypothetical example. If you could have AI make your sales team 5 or 10% more productive, at least most CEOs that I know would then hire more salespeople, because productivity gains in your sales process are usually your only limiter to how much then you decide to spend on sales. Like, most companies want to grow, they want more customers, they want to kind of take more market share. And so sales productivity gains then ultimately usually leads to reinvestment, either back into sales or the corresponding things that are growing as a result of that sales kind of growth improvement. Conversely, I think there's a lot of areas in organizations where we've underinvested in the past. In the software industry, we have these roles called customer success managers, and usually their job is to proactively work with customers to make them more successful with your technology. And I don't think I've ever found a company that feels that they have enough customer success managers, because there's always more things you'd like to be able to help your customers do with your product. And you actually just have an affordability problem of how many people can I hire in customer success management. So if we could make AI more efficient in other parts of our customer success process or customer support process, that would be an area that we'd then go and reinvest. And then maybe the final example would be, there's a lot of small businesses, millions and millions, where they now have the capability access that usually only been available to the world's largest companies. You're a small business, a 3 or 5 person company just starting out. You want expert legal advice, or expert consulting advice, or expert marketing work, or coding on new features. You've never had access to that talent before. It just was not available to you.
Yeah.
AI agents now begin to democratize access to those types of tools and resources. And you might say, well, okay, then that just means they get that and they don't hire people as a result. That's usually not what happens. What happens is that small business now is able to build more features or deliver better marketing campaigns. Well, if those are actually better marketing campaigns, what should happen? They should get more customers. They get more customers, there's a new bottleneck in the organization. Maybe it's they need more people for supply chain. Maybe it's they need more people for working on product. Maybe it's more people to work on, selling and doing customer success. So I think you need to not think about these systems as static, but actually as very interdependent dynamic systems, where if I change one variable over here, there's going to be a ripple that causes some other dynamic to shift. And usually that shift means there's more hiring in another area of the economy, or even within that business.
Yeah, I follow. One question for you, one final question. So recently you talked on X about the most important factor for AI agents is getting the context necessary to execute the task successfully. No matter how powerful models get, context will always be king.
Yeah.
What do you mean by context?
Yeah.
And why is it such a limiting factor for AI agent performance?
Well, let's take the most kind of basic example. If I go to ChatGPT today and I say, help me with my, pitch this client that I'm selling to. Well, it will actually give you an answer. But it's going to give you an answer based only and solely on the training data that it has, which is basically the public internet. And so maybe you're lucky enough that your company's big enough and it has some information about your company because it's been trained on public web sources. But even then, it doesn't know all of your sales manuals. It doesn't know all of your internal training processes. It doesn't know all your win-loss rates on different, customer segments to improve that sales process. It only knows what it was trained on. So it needs context. Now, you can get that context through a number of ways. You can write a really, really long prompt, and that prompt could be, 2 pages worth of instructions and information. And there's prompts that dramatically exceed, what you would have gotten if you hadn't done that when you have a really long prompt. And that's one form of context. Another form of context is just your corporate knowledge that your company has access to. And that collection of data of years and years and years of information that was produced, that we created, it was shared, it was accessed by somebody, but probably at this point it's just stored somewhere and you haven't seen it for a while. And unless somebody pulls up a link to it and shares it with you over email or Slack or something, you're not going to run into it. And that is the vast majority of our corporate information, is that unstructured data. It's the marketing assets, the contracts, the invoices, the internal process information, supply chain data. All of that data becomes a critical context for AI agents to operate with. And when you give the AI agents that context, they can help you make better decisions. They can turn all of that unstructured information into this valuable goldmine of intelligence for your company. And so the more that we can create agents that understand your domain, that understand its kind of goal and set of instructions, and your corporate knowledge in a safe way that inherently knows your own permissions and access, so it doesn't sort of accidentally share the wrong information with a user that shouldn't have access to that data. That's the context that makes AI systems extremely powerful. And that's why we're going to see this revolution with now what you can do with your unstructured data because of how valuable this is to AI.
Wonderful. Wonderful. Fantastic. Aaron, thank you so much for your time. For anybody interested in any of the points raised here, please do make sure to download your own copy of Becoming an AI First Company. You can get that at blog.box.com/AI-first. Aaron, thank you again.
Thank you. Cheers. Appreciate it.